Well, hello and welcome to today's edition of Technically Speaking with Perimeter 83. My name is JC Smith and I am the Business Development Specialist for Perimeter 83. For those of you that aren't familiar with Perimeter 83, we are the business to business side of the University of Advancing Technology. We do house the co-working space on campus. We focus on professional training for business organizations and also collaborate with businesses for professional services. In addition to that, we also host a series of webinars featuring UAT professors and the Grow with Google series. So definitely be sure to check out our Eventbrite page for more information on the upcoming events. So today's Technically Speaking webinar will be with Professor Dapzury Valenzuela on the future of marketing with tech. So Dapzury Valenzuela is a marketing consultant and educator with decades of industry experience in teaching and post-secondary education. She is the art direction professor at UAT, where she runs the Student Innovation Project, which you'll hear a little bit about today, for all majors, helping students create, manage, and develop tech-based products and services. She's helped individuals, startups, and established businesses reach their goals through her extensive knowledge in brand development, inbound marketing, and visual content in both traditional and digital formats. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Professor Valenzuela. And just some housekeeping notes too. We have enabled both the Q&A function and the chat function for today's webinar. So if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to post those and we will address those either during the presentation or afterwards for the Q&A session. So with that, I will turn it over to you and welcome. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for sharing your lunch hour with me. I'm excited to share some content that I feel is extremely relevant considering the times that we find ourselves in. So I do appreciate your time. We'll make the most of it and hopefully you take away some nuggets of information that will be helpful and useful for you. So I have created an infographic in Adobe Illustrator so that way I can visually communicate a lot of the content that I'll be reviewing with you today. So I'll go ahead and share my screen so we can go ahead and get started. So the topic that I want to focus on for today is the future of brand marketing with tech. So you probably have heard a lot of jargon and rhetoric and information and vocabulary about marketing, everything from content marketing, inbound marketing, user-generated content, brand marketing, branding, and there's so much crossover between all of those topics that the one that I really want to focus is the one that you need to start with, brand marketing. And because we're in a digital age, it's great for us to leverage the use of technology so that way you can promote your product or service. And there's a small description there at the bottom so that way you can really just understand the basis of what brand marketing is. Now, you're a brand, I'm a brand, everyone is a brand, whether you realize it or not. It's the way in which we communicate our identity, our value system, our personalities. And then when you create a business, you're trying to exude that same type of communication with your audience. Now, this does require us to understand consumer habits. We'll touch upon that topic later in the presentation, and also what motivates us, right? We're still human beings. We want to engage, we want to connect, and also we want to be entertained. So we need to understand what motivates us to do so with businesses and brands and individuals. And this is all based on sound research. So that hasn't changed. That's one of my favorite things that I love to do. I love to research and hunt and read and be very observant and listen. Because of social media, so many people are literally telling you what they want. They share their frustrations, and in that type of social listening, you can identify ways that you can mitigate those concerns or offer a solution to a problem that they may be experiencing. The wonderful thing about tech is that there's a lot of analytics, so you can really dig deep into the information and the data that is gathered, so you can analyze it and decide which of your attempts worked the best. And then the most favorite thing of all is that you have the power and the control to communicate any of these topics through whatever platform you think is best. And we'll talk about that as well. So I'm excited to share the future of brand marketing with tech because it offers us, all of us, new ways to engage. And this ability to engage is advanced, it's immersive, and it's exponential. So that means it's moving at the speed of sound. And so we're going to talk about, what we can do to really just leverage the technology that we have today. So one of the first things that you want to do when you're considering brand marketing is to reaffirm your mission. This requires us to really just boil it down to several aspects of what makes us human, because even when businesses are established, it's created by humans. And so you want to first ask yourself questions that relate to your identity. And yes, that does require some self-reflection. Amongst all the books that I read, quite a bit of them are on self-help and just really being in tune with your intuition and a lot of what we already have with human ingenuity, which is your own perspective on life and your experiences. So you want to ask yourself questions such as, how do you see yourself or your business? What distinguishes you from someone else? What story could you share that would help us connect with you? And that's a big one right there. It's no different than us gathering around a fire when we're camping. It's the way we connect with one another. So a story really is a great way for us to just establish what prompted this idea. And the last one is, what would you like people to say about your brand? And a brand really is what people say about you when you leave the room. It's what people comment on when they see your commercial. It's the comments that they also leave when they see your YouTube video. And so you want people to express certain attributes about your brand, and establishing your identity is incredibly important to do so. So the little magnifying glass does mean that sometimes we have to, look upon and observe, areas of improvement, and also just, remove anything that hasn't helped you. If you, continue to do the same thing over and over again, expecting the same outcome, that's called insanity. And Einstein, really just honed in on the fact that when something isn't working, we have to just pivot a little bit and change it. And then the next one is values. This one is really important. At the end of this presentation, when JC sends you a link to the recording, there'll be an attachment from an author that outlines hundreds of values, everything from justice to creativity to inclusivity. So that way you can identify 10 values and then summarize them to your top 3. Now you can have 3 personal values that guide every decision that you make in your personal life. But then you can also have professional values, the ones that you are not willing to negotiate on, the ones that no matter how much money or how much investment, they really do guide everything that you do. So what actions do you live by? What motivates you? What do you want to prove? And then you want to identify those 1 to 3 values that really resonate with the way you make decisions and solve problems. That means no matter what happens, you never derive away from those values. And it's important to identify what those are and then share that with your people. And you are not meant to really abide by everybody and satisfy the entire population. It's a matter of finding the people within your niche so that way they can advocate for you. So you do have a tiny bit of a homework assignment as a professor. I'd feel a little reluctant if I didn't give you one, but it'll be fun. And it's good for us to reflect on those values as we grow and evolve. And then the next one is personality. This is really just you being yourself. There is no one else quite like you, right? And so you want to really make sure that you are your best self. And for you to have those aspirations so that way you know what you want to become. What does your business stand for? Or what do you stand for? What would others describe you or your business? What factors play a role in the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you act? And the last question is really, really important because it asks you, what would you dare to do? If feedback, if comments, if opinions didn't matter, what would you do that would make yourself or your business stand out? And then you can really just dig a little deeper to see if there's any way that you can hone in on that type of personality that really showcases who you truly are. So with brand marketing, you really have to come down to the very fundamental basics of identifying, reaffirming your mission. What are your value systems? Sometimes they're called pillars or, guidance. And then also your personality, being truly who you are, because it's easy to be real. And it's also a way for you to just continue to share that type of personality with others. Once you reaffirm your mission and identify your identity, your values, and your personality, you need to identify your target audience. Just like anything else, if you don't have something to aim at, you'll miss. And so you really want to dig deep on what it is that you can identify regarding who you want to target. Now, many of you are probably very familiar with demographics and just acquiring data that specifies who your audience is, such as gender and age and income. And these are all, quantitative data points that you can easily gather from simple research. But psychographics, on the other hand, is a little bit more difficult. This is where you are really looking at attitudes and opinions and values of those that you are trying to reach. And consider that right now in the middle of a pandemic, the political climate that we find ourselves in, and just social unrest as example, it's top of mind for many people. And that's because we are trying to reconnect with what really truly makes us successful. And that's helping each other out. At the end of the day, you need to have your own goals, but as you help others achieve their goals, you will achieve your own as well. And so you really need to consider all the qualitative data points that really make your brand unique and make you unique. And then everything else are just additional points to consider, such as behavior. That certainly is changing right now. You probably even noticed that your own behavior has changed because of the pandemic. We're in a digital age, so luckily this pandemic didn't occur in the mid 80s, where maybe we didn't have as much technology available to connect with each other. But luckily, we're in 2021, and the silver lining is that we have a lot of tech in place to really connect with each other, much like we're doing so now. And so preferences and interests are incredibly important because people's behaviors do change. And that's because of the old brain. I read a lot of books on marketing and psychology and what motivates people at a fundamental level. And behavior is a huge one because what you think impacts how you feel, which impacts how you act. And the more that you can try to understand people's behavior and where they're coming from, like emotional intelligence and empathy, that really helps you to reach them where they're at. And then social media is another wonderful way to reach people. And then understanding life stages, whether you're a student, a newlywed, a new parent, an empty nester, or even you're an entrepreneur, you're starting a new business, you're trying to grow your business, those life stages do impact a lot of the decisions. And then spending habits. We do live in a consumer society where spending is part of our lives, but we're also rethinking. We're rethinking what we spend our hard-earned money on because during a pandemic, much like after a war or during a depression or a recession, we're starting to really just take in consideration how we want to spend our dollars. And with the ease of credit cards and Apple Pay or Venmo or Google Wallet, it makes it much more easy for us to spend on a dime. However, people are really looking at supporting brands that stand for something, that want to contribute to the greater good. They don't want to just share the product that they purchased from your company. They want to share the experience that they had, whether it's the packaging, whether it's the customer service, whether it's the engagement online pre and post, the purchase. You really want to take advantage because people want to connect from the concept to completion, from the beginning of, identifying an interest and lead all the way to the complete of the sale. So spend time here to understand who really is your customer and try to identify your niche because there's a lot of success and a lot of riches in those niches. I got that from someone on Twitter, so that was kind of fun. And why is this important? We have to consider that today's connected consumer has access to tablets, to laptops, to smartphone devices, to, content online via video and podcasts and webinars. And so this ubiquitous nature of us having smartphone devices has really empowered people. They can compare costs, they can evaluate based on ratings or scores. So you want to keep that in mind because people will conduct their research. They will compare your product with others. And they are willing to pay more if there's something that allows them to speak on behalf of what that product meant to them, whether it helps them to communicate their own value system, or if you provide a way for them to express their attitudes, their opinions. And yes, that does require brands to be more human, Rather than engaging with the logo online, it's actually a human being. Who is your social media manager, or who is your VP, or who's the owner of the company? We want to engage with the people that bootstrapped and put in the hard work and build in public, so that way people can support you. They want to see you succeed, but they want to see you succeed if you invite them along the journey. Much like I remember this portion from a talk that Chris Rock made during one of his comic series, when he says, one time my car broke down and I tried to push it by myself. And that's when people actually started helping. But if I'm just sitting there on the side of the road doing nothing, then nobody pulled over to help. But once I got out and actually started pushing my own car, people pulled over and helped me push. And so that really just showcases the willingness of others to help you, but only when you're showing that you're doing your best. You just need the assistance of others to get to where you're at. So one of the topics that really impacts a lot of what we do is being innovative. As a country, as a young country, relatively speaking, we've innovated since we first arrived. And we have revolutionized the way in which we live. One of the classes that I teach at UAT is Industry Innovations, and it's a wonderful class to get a taste of what it's like to be at UAT. Because I was given extensive time to really develop the class, I integrate a lot of the graphics and visuals, video content, embedded links, activities, surveys, anything that I can do to really engage the user or the learner into the concept that I'm trying to relate. But when we think of innovation, you also have to understand where we have come from, right? We have to understand what has worked in the past. And when we consider really big topics like agriculture and farming, things that are going to become top of mind as we continue to experience the changes of climate and so forth. Weapons, we are still living in an age where we have to feel safe and secure and be able to defend ourselves. Communication is another one. How is it that we are leveraging all aspects of relating a message, receiving a message? What communication channels do we use? At UAT, we use everything from Teams and Zoom and Discord and YouTube and forums, all these ways that we can try to access information in real time. And because people understand that that's available, they expect you to also respond in real time as much as possible. When you consider other topics such as trade and industry, we are a global entity. We do partner with other countries, but we also have to stay in the forefront of innovation, so that way we're not left behind. We need to make sure that we're innovating in robotics, much like Japan is, or in engineering, much like Germany is. And so with trade and industry, we need to find ways that we can stay at the forefront of innovation and be considered a leader in the world. Democracy, that's a very personal topic for many of us. I'm personally an immigrant to this country. I came here when I was 3 years old, and I was raised in this country without a lot of the benefits that are granted and bestowed upon people that are naturally born citizens. And so I really honor and appreciate all of the again, benefits that I can reap from just being a now naturalized citizen. But democracy really does stand for a way to really be as much to everyone as possible. So when you're thinking of technology of the future, which we'll touch upon in just a bit, we're looking at ways to dematerialize, demonetize, democratize, and delocalize. What can we do to make our products and services available to as many people as possible, especially if you think it's going to benefit their lives and improve their quality of life? Other topics are mass production, as example. Currency is a big one with Bitcoin right now. Other ways that we can also decentralize and disrupt, the financial sector with blockchain. There's so many ways that we are exchanging value, and that's also going to continue to evolve as we realize that we can't just continue to consume. We need to, pay attention to other topics like recycling, upcycling, re-commerce, reuse of items so that way we're not just disposing of them so quickly. The financial markets will be impacted much like they are today because of the ebbs and flows of what we're experiencing as a society and as a world. Machines and robotics, everything from prosthetics. One of the tech companies that I worked with for 4 years, we really honed in on working and partnering with existing companies on like 3D printing prosthetics that we can donate to third world countries. And also additional ways that we can engage and educate people, much like a medical client that we worked with for creating a VR experience so that way we can communicate the effects of diabetes. And so all of these different ways that we can leverage tech to show the importance of a topic as example. And then everything from scientific discovery to medicine, that's a huge one right now because of the largest generation that is already going into retirement, which is the baby boomers. The extension of life. How is our quality of life going to be impacted just because the medicine allows me to live longer? And so technology itself really does play a big part in the way that we innovate. And I know that I'm talking about big topics, but again, remember, the first settlers that came to this country really didn't have much. They had to start from scratch and they did very little and built and built. And yes, that did require, people from all over the world, but we also saw the challenges and also some of the adversity that groups of people had to experience to become the country that we are. So we have to be very sensitive to, the history that is associated with groups of people that, had adversity and that were, essentially almost wiped out. And we have to consider that we won't and don't want to repeat the same mistakes that we have done in the past. So innovation is a really passionate topic of mine. And it's one that I integrate in a lot of the classes that I teach at UAT. So let's talk about what tech is best. There's so much out there. And so let's review a short list of tech advancements and others that are projected to grow. Now, this is not a comprehensive list. There's just so much, but this is really some of the ones that are most talked about right now. The Consumer Electronics Show just finished yesterday, and it's one of the conferences that really showcases over 700 startups and global brands and companies that are showing their innovative projects and how they are foreseeing the future. And so here on the left-hand side, you see that we have everything from 3D printing all the way down to wearable computing devices. And it's not to say that you have to engage in all of these. It's just so that way you're aware of where we are moving. So that way you can decide what's your niche, what's the type of tech that you feel genuinely interested in, so that way you can see how you can leverage that. 3D printing, I foresee everyone having a 3D printer in their house, much like we have a microwave and a TV. We'll be able to print on demand with different filaments that'll help us to, only print what we need. So that way we're not overproducing. 5G cellular networks is another big topic right now. The wireless technology for faster internet speeds and low latency, but consider that it still needs cell towers, or upgrading existing ones. And 4G took 2 to 3 years to really be fully implemented. So even though there's a lot of hype around that, it's going to take a little time for us to really reap the benefits of 5G. But again, that's going to help us experience things like VR without any latency because of those type of infrastructures. Another huge one that was part of the Consumer Electronics Show was AI. And Mark Cuban, mentioned that much like back in the day when we had typewriters and people were on the fence about engaging in computers and word processing, nowadays, imagine us doing work in a typewriter. It's just not something we can even understand and wrap our head around. But that's where AI is going. And artificial intelligence will be part of many aspects of life. And so we really need to try our best to understand how that will impact how we live our lives and what we can use, so that way we don't exude a lot of human ingenuity, but rather put it towards an intelligence that can help us do things faster and easier and safer, as example. And then other topics are augmented reality. That's a big one for entertainment, superimposing, computer graphics in reality, so that way we can engage in some format. This is a big one for education because we can bring concepts to life in a safe manner. It's huge for training as well. And so augmented reality is going to continue to improve as technology itself exponentially improves. And then we have things like autonomous vehicles. Living in Phoenix right now, we have a grid system, so it allows us to really navigate through the city fairly easily. And that's why you see so many autonomous vehicles and solar powered vehicles making their way and doing their test runs in the city. So that's going to be a huge one. And that also goes right into a digital city. What can we in Arizona, as example, or in your particular state, do to ensure that we are at the forefront of becoming a digital city? Making sure that we only create what we need and leverage what we already have. Big data is a big one. Blockchain, if you're interested in, a way of, democratizing the way we exchange value and also the way in which we can track and have as much transparency as possible. Chatbots is something that we're pretty used to at this point. Cloud-based, software as a service is another one. Cybersecurity is huge right now. And I know that we had another speaker, a cybersecurity professor at UAT, Aaron Jones, who talked about cybersecurity in one of his other Perimeter 83 technically speaking events. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, definitely recommend that you view that recording. Digital health is a big one right now because of the generation that's retiring and also because of the pandemic. There's a lot more focus on what we can do to maintain our health, and people are more likely to, really pay attention to their bodies and try to seek out natural remedies and being more fit and healthy. And mental wellness is a huge one as well. So digital health does cover and include mental wellness, because as much as we demand from our bodies, we need to make sure that mentally we are capable of performing at our best, despite the challenges. Some of us are, working from home. Right now I'm doing this webinar and I have my two children, online right now. And so just having the ability to maintain and balance the responsibilities of those that perhaps are parents or even pet parents, taking care of your little furry ones. Drones, haptics is a big one with VR and 3D touch. So that way we can experience those, locations that maybe we can't get to, or that experience that maybe it's a little too daring to do in real life, or even also education and training. The Internet of Things is a huge one with smart homes and having your devices connected with each other. Machine learning, mixed reality, nanotechnology. Re-commerce is a big one right now because of the sustainability initiative that we're all trying to really meet. And it'll be forced upon in some states by their government. So you want to be ready for that as well. Robotics, social media is a big one. Leverage the fact that people are literally telling you what they want. And it couldn't have been easier, because when I first started in the industry in the early 90s or mid 90s, there were focus groups, and sometimes they probably just told us what we wanted to hear. But now in social media, there's a lot of data just being exchanged freely and openly. VR is one of my favorites because of working with tech companies that built in VR to showcase concepts, and then wearable computing devices and just wearable fashion. One of my first degrees is in fashion, and fashion technology has been a topic of mine for some time. And it's just wonderful to see how sustainability and technology will completely change the fashion industry. And that's something that I'm incredibly passionate about, because we can't continue to operate the same way we have been, because it's simply not sustainable and it's not ethical. And I'm working with really great brands that hopefully will see and help to really change the way in which we not so much wear clothing, but what we communicate and what we can do with the technology embedded in the clothing that we wear. And even though I shared a lot of big topics, it's like, wow, what can I do today? You shared so many topics that maybe I'm not quite ready to embark on, but what can I walk away with today? What can I do today as an individual, as an aspiring creative, as a startup, as a small business, as a mid-sized business, or even a large global brand? What can I do today? And you can market through various platforms. There's a lot of, very inexpensive ways, the low-hanging fruit of how you can market your brand to others. Instant messaging is a big favorite for millennials and Gen Z. They prefer that way of engaging. A lot of my students who are, exiting high school and entering higher ed love those Discord channels and teams and short, quick informational messages. So instant messaging is a big one through also social media, through Facebook, through Instagram, through direct messaging or DMs through Twitter as example. So it's a way for people to save time. The internet itself offers you a plethora of options. Text messages is another very viable option for people that don't necessarily want to have the phone in their hands while they're speaking, but rather just message their communication with their audience. Podcast is a big one right now. I know we're flirting with the idea of launching our own at UAT, but podcast is another way that we can continuously offer stories and best practices with people. So it's a very low entry way for you to engage with your audience and offer a continuous stream of content that is valuable. Apps in general, just creating an app and working with app developers. Social media is the big one because it's so prevalent and available to many, and digital TV with live streaming and whatnot. So there's a lot of options right here that you can walk away from. And yes, it does differ from traditional media that predominated prior to the information age, but we, foresee the difference or the different ways that we can leverage what we've done in the past, like billboards. One of my students was pitching an idea of the billboards being recycled to be more like GPS interfaces. So that way it can tell you ahead of time if there's a traffic jam or a car accident so that we can veer you off the freeway as example. And so those are just ways in which we can try to tap into ideas that can hopefully make our lives better. And I mentioned UAT, it's the University of Advancing Technology, and I run the Student Innovation Project there. And what that is the Student Innovation Project is a long-term project where students pitch an idea to their SMEs, their subject matter experts, so that way they can get it approved and they can work on this idea from 9 months to a year to fully execute to a proof of concept and minimal viable prototype. And here's just a little screenshot of some of the projects that were shared during our fall 2020 showcase. Every end of the semester, we have a nice, wonderful celebratory event. And this is just a little snippet, and we can certainly share these as well. This included a robotic pet toy organizer, an educational learning tool that teaches kids color theory, a mobile app for rearranging furniture, an interactive 2D animated short film, a game-based art experience, a co-op horror game, an AR escape room, a pop-up book inspired game, a Discord bot, an intuitive API that simplifies IoT development, a digital-based puzzle game that provides psychological analysis, a network security tool, an automated network diagramming making tool, as well as a smart house security solution and a biometric scanner and phishing simulator, just to name a few. So what we do is help the students come up with this idea and actually showcase that proof of concept. So hopefully after graduation, they can either share their idea with the marketplace or run a beta version or seek investment so that way they can do their own startups. So it's a very exciting, and it is a little grueling and demanding, but anything that is worth it usually is. And it's another way for us to showcase innovation and do something a little differently so that way you can prove to your potential employer that you have what it takes to commit and execute. And speaking of, if you are a business owner, we offer opportunities for you to have interns from our student base so that way they can get real world experience and help you reach your goals through the internship partnership. So that's another wonderful way for us to collaborate there. So here is a link, and that'll be shared with you as well. So that way you can actually see the full 4 to 5 hour SIP showcase. So you can see every video demonstrated in real time. And when it comes to brand marketing, a bit of what we want to walk away with today is some of the things that I, encourage you to consider. If you have a company where you are able to hire employees or have existing employees, leverage the creative output of young talent. They want to engage, they want to create, they want to provide, creative ideas. And if you give them the avenue to do so, then they'll be more likely to be loyal, to stay with you, to, remain with your company. And I know that that can be scary for some people, because it's like, well, what can I do exactly? Well, identify again, go back to reaffirming your mission, find those people that believe in your mission so that we can build your business. And then again, offer them those platforms and opportunities to create because they want to. And it's another way for them to really identify what they can do for your company and advocate for your brand. Another one is create opportunities for your employees to become brand ambassadors. You already have them employed, so they should be screaming your name. They should be sharing it with their friends and family. If not, something's wrong. And so you want to have them participate in creating user-generated content. And that's the most real, it's the most transparent, and it's the most authentic. And the way you can start with is swag. I mean, it sounds silly, but it really is. Think about the fact that every culture, when there's a traditional ceremony, there's a specific way in which you dress, and either makeup or headdress or your garments or any type of accessories. So we are by nature prone to want to belong. And when you have swag, it means that here, welcome to my company. Here's a t-shirt, a water bottle, a sticker, something that I can look at and say, I'm part of something. I'm part of something bigger than myself. And it also helps to further promote your brand. And then the last one is to allocate a budget for intrapreneurs. So if you have a large enough company, you can have a small cohort of creative people that just work on innovative projects on the side. So that way they can experience entrepreneurship without leaving your company. So it's a nice win-win for both, because then they can really innovate without leaving your specific business. So it's a nice way to have some product development occur in-house. And if your budget really permits it, you definitely want to consider hiring an actual marketer. It's hard enough to just manage your business and wear all the different hats. And after working with so many different startups, yes, you are wearing multiple hats and doing everything. And sometimes that can be overwhelming. And we talk a lot about on social media with burnout and people just feeling overextended. But if your budget permits, hiring somebody that lives and breathes marketing, that does it for a living, that enjoys it, will really help you to maximize and allow you to focus on the business, and then the marketer to focus on the promotion and the PR and the advocacy of the business itself. And that's because there's so much integrated in just marketing alone. And yes, there are open source web tools, there's widgets, but they can only go so far, because in marketing, topics trend and new things come out, or new tools or features and capabilities. And you want to make sure that you do your best to stay on top of that. Like, I love to read. Maybe at the end of the webinar, I can show you my library, but I read all the time. And I find that even for leisure, I'm reading topics on marketing and business and design. And that's because I love the topic so much. It's just learning about it makes me feel like high school student all over again. So you really just want to find those individuals that really enjoy engaging and creating for you. So what does the future hold? Well, there's a lot of information. It can be analyzed. And so the great thing is that a lot of the homework is done for you, so that way you can make those decisions. But we as human beings need to realize that change is the new normal. I mean, it's constant change. It's moving rapidly. But imagine if we were stagnant, it'd be boring. Just like a plant, if it's not growing, it's dying. And so you really want to embrace the fact that change and speed is a part of who we are as a species. And so we must continue to transform, to enhance and evolve our brands and businesses, and also leverage the tech to make our jobs easier, faster, and more importantly, personalized. People expect to have personal experiences because they know that you're gathering their information. So then it's like, you should know this, but also avoid the creep factor. It can be a little weird to know too much, but also to ensure that we are leveraging tech, with all ethical standards in place and privacy and security measures, so that way people feel comfortable sharing information with you. So that is what I have to share, just a little bit about myself for those that you don't know me. For the past 20 years, I've been working with startups, with nonprofits, with small businesses, with creative individuals that range from eco-friendly products to VR. And I've also been teaching in higher ed for 15 years now. And as I mentioned, I'm the art direction professor at the University of Advancing Technology. And I'm also the founder of Hot Pro. It's a creative platform for people that are really just looking at changing and disrupting industries that are antiquated and hoping that there's a better solution out there. And also on the right, you'll see that you can connect with me via Instagram or Twitter with my Dapzury handle, as well as LinkedIn. And if you want more information about UAT, you can certainly follow them on Twitter and Instagram as well, or visit their website. But this is what I have for you today. So hopefully you enjoyed the graphics. I love being creative and just doing what I can to engage the audience in with text, with graphics, with visuals. And we can certainly share this with you as well if you would like to, talk about this topic of brand marketing with tech, with your colleagues and your friends.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dapzury. That was such a great presentation. We did receive a comment from an attendee that said that this has been fantastic, and I couldn't agree more. And just as a reminder, if you have any questions, please feel free to post those in either the chat box or the Q&A. I do have a question for you. You did cover some of the newer technologies like 5G and chatbots. So from an automation perspective, since there are people that are just terrified of the term automation, how do you see that affecting marketing in the future down the road?
Well, that's a really big one, in particular with what we experienced, in recent weeks with the political climate. Is there was this big shout out to all marketers on social media to pause their automated messages because you need to be conscientious of what we're experiencing as a society. And so, with automation, although it can be very effective, you need to make sure that you're in tune with what's happening in the lives of individuals, because then it doesn't look and it's frowned upon because you're not in touch with what's really happening. At the end of the day, we have jobs. We love to, grow and create, but at the end of the day, we're still humans. And when we see others suffering, we want to make sure that we do our best to be respectful. And automation can be a tool that is effective, but you also have to be very careful to not continue to allow it to continue when things are at the forefront of everybody's minds.
I think that's a really great point to keep in mind, that although we have these tools, to our disposal, that we do need to be cautious of the messages that we send out, especially as marketers. So thank you for that one there. I don't see any other questions or comments. Oh, wait, one just popped in. Oh, yes. Brian said, Phoenix Fashion Week is here and so proud of what Dapzury continues to create and share with the world. So yes, again, from Brian. So yes, we definitely adore Professor Valenzuela here at UAT as well. She plays an important part in developing the student journey along the way. And as you can see from her presentation, the topics that she covers are a little bit more in depth than what you would find from a traditional university. So yes, definitely we admire her and her work. Well, I appreciate all of you for joining us today. I don't see any other, oh, there's one. How do you focus on the top digital items to use in your brand if you're a startup?
That's a great question. So with so many offerings, you want to make sure that even though you hear a lot of hype about the next and latest social media platform, that you only identify the ones that you feel comfortable working with. So for example, even as a marketer, I was on the fence of engaging in social media for many years. And it's kind of weird because that's the industry that I'm in. But I only engaged in the ones that I felt gave me more than what I put in. It's like the reward factor outweighs the work that you actually put into it. So I identified 3 and only 3 because I'm a parent and I work and I'm a spouse, and I think that it shouldn't interfere with you being a real authentic person. And so identifying 3 platforms that you feel are natural and intuitive. So if you're more of a content creator with movement, then video might be your place. If it's more microblogging that's tech-based, then Twitter is your place. If it's more of a photography, then Instagram would be your platform of choice. So you have to also consider that when you have those platforms, you have to feed the monster constantly. And people sway away fairly quickly when they go back to the platform and they see that you haven't shared much in a day or 2 or 3. And so you have to consider that this constant creation and valuable content that's being shared needs to be fed constantly. And it also has to be just as good. You're just as good as your last tweet. You're just as good as your last post. And if someone only saw that one post, you want them to come back for more. So that's a great question, but try not to be everything to everyone. It's impossible. And it only makes sense to be really strong at a few instead. Yes, the magic number is 3.
Yes, and if you were going to start a new fashion line tomorrow, what would you design for the world, and what would be your initial 3 action steps?
Oh, wow, what a great question. The first one is definitely to ensure that the lives of the human beings that create garments for people to use are respected, that it's ethical, that it's safe. And without that, we can't simply continue to operate the way we are. The internet and social media has exposed brands on a level that's unprecedented. So you really just need to be forefront of the way you conduct your business. And it's okay to not have all the answers. So it would be, again, just a way of creating fashion brands that share as much of their transparency as possible, so that way people can advocate for them and justify why is it that you can't offer that, garment at $10. That there's a reason why that garment is costing $60 or $100. You want to make sure that the employees are paid fairly. And if that requires a type of app or a web-based interface that is in combination with that garment, that would be even better, because then it helps to educate the consumer on where that garment came from. And if I had a way of creating a fashion brand, it would be with integrating the human side of it with it. Because what if I later own a garment that was previously worn by a celebrity or a political leader? It would be kind of a nice talking point to say, this jacket that I'm wearing was once used by X person. And then that further helps to create value to that garment that we so quickly dispose of. And there's a lot of companies that are really looking at the forefront. Eon is a great example. If you want a case study that you want to look into, they're looking at circular ID, to having an ID tag to the garment, so that way you can follow it and track it. So that way it gives value even post discarding of the garment. So that's a really great company to really look at right now.
Awesome. Yeah, that's very interesting information. I think it's very important to consumers, from that transparency side of making sure that they understand the message and what you're trying to, put out in the market, and, your responsibility as the manufacturer as well. So I think those are very valid points. Any other questions from the attendees? Again, we will be sending out the recording. It will be uploaded to the Perimeter 83 YouTube channel, which is also where you can find all the other episodes of Technically Speaking. Again, they are professors that volunteer their time to put these on. They're really great events and very interesting information. The cybersecurity ones, I will warn you, might give you some heebie-jeebies on what it is that you're searching on the internet. So just, watch that one with caution. But we always host these. The goal is to have 2 a month for 2021. So definitely be on the lookout for future events. And we will, again, send out the information, the recording, and anything that Professor Valenzuela would like me to send along with that. So if you have any questions about anything, please feel free to reach out to me. You can check out Perimeter 83 by visiting the website at www.perimeter83.com. And again, we look forward to seeing you all at our next event.
Thank you, JC.
Of course, my pleasure.